We can now speak to Mike Jones, the Executive Director of Migration Watch. Mike, welcome to the programme. See, now, when I watch that, I feel that I feel like they don't know what they're doing.
Oh, I completely agree. Angela Rayner seems to think that the law of supply and demand doesn't apply to immigrants, just the British people. But the thing is, the law of supply and demand is indiscriminate. It's very simple. If you increase the supply of people, then you increase the supply for the demand for housing, and prices increase along with that.
Yeah. And she didn't seem to get it, because she said there was a lot of supply, then there wasn't a lot of supply, and then there wasn't enough for those who desperately need it. Anybody who needs a house or a home desperately needs it, irrespective of whether you're a migrant or British citizen or whatever. If you're homeless, you desperately need a house. That's just the general gist of things. What do you make of the fact that they are investing and they're going to build 1.5 million new homes? But again, we had over 600 people crossing the English Channel only yesterday. Where are they going to go?
Good question. Well, there are actually two questions here. The first is, will Labour meet its housing targets of 1.5 million over 4 years? You know, some people are optimistic on this, others less so. It's still open to conjecture. I couldn't comment on that. But the second question is more interesting. If net migration continues at its current rate, will Labour's housing policy make a difference? And by difference, I mean, will it reduce the cost of mortgages? Will it reduce the cost of rents? And the answer to that question is simple. It's no. The cost of housing and the cost of rents will increase, and they'll increase much more rapidly than real wages. And even if Sir Keir Starmer manages to halve net migration, it's not going to make that much of a difference to prices. In fact, house prices could still increase at a much more rapid rate compared to real wages.
Why do you think that the government don't appear to be taking the crisis across the Channel seriously? Because when I hear that, I think you're not really taking this seriously. Hundreds of people are coming here on a daily basis via dinghy to this country, and we have to house them. And most of them will stay here anyway. And if they don't, or they fail their asylum claim, we will still pay for them to have legal representation until eventually, well, they end up staying.
I think it's mostly an ideological failure. The Labour Party is emotionally committed to the Human Rights Act. But the problem with the Human Rights Act is it's the root cause of the illegal Channel crisis, because ultimately you cannot deport people who arrive from unsafe countries like Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and so on. And to make matters worse, Labour has got rid of the Rwanda plan. So there's no third safe country to deport these people. Labour have increased returns to safe countries, and that's a good thing. You know, that's low-hanging fruit. But if you want to stop the boats, end the crisis, you need a policy of detaining people and deporting them, ideally within 48 hours. But you can't do that with the Human Rights Act.
Well, they might argue that the real problem is legal migration, which went crazy under the Conservative Party. I mean, they're supposed to be people who are conservative, but that's not how it went with them. And they would argue that actually the real problem is legal migration, not really those on the small boats, even though the numbers aren't that big. But legal migration is huge.
In terms of numbers, yes. Legal migration is much, much larger. The Conservatives obviously had this bizarre points-based system which was uncapped. And the Labour Party have quite rightly described this as an experiment, you know, like some crazy anarchist in a laboratory. Now, I agree with Keir Starmer on the diagnosis, but I don't agree with him on the cure. Starmer does not want to cap the legal migration system, and that is absolutely fatal.
Does seem utter madness. You need to say what the full number should be, or at least have an idea of how many people you need. Thank you very much. That is Mike Jones. He's the Executive Director of Migration Watch.